Gareth Bale is the one which, I got such pushback.
Did you?
Because
more than Pogba. Pogba, you were mean to him. 1 out of 5, you mean.
How? Why?
At least 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 is fair.
1 out of 5 means I think if he had extended his contract, he might have had 2 out of 5. But they got 0. They're getting 0. They're losing him for nothing.
That's why you got. Yeah, but
I mean, there's no.
Yeah, but the only issue I have with that, and I agreed with you for Julien to a certain extent, but this is not Paul Pogba's fault. So you give him a lower mark or grade, whatever it's called, for something that is not his fault, for almost a mismanagement from Manchester United.
I'm not giving him the grade. I'm giving the deal the grade.
True, but
right?
it's still under his name, and he shows that he was.
But
not
that's why I think people need to be grown up about it. And
when
it comes to Gareth Bale,
I think we are.
It's the same thing, right? People are like, oh look, but he scored the Champions League, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. He was at the club for 9 years, 8 years, because one of those years they literally had to pay him money to go away, to go play somewhere else. He missed an enormous amounts of starts in that time.
Yeah.
They gave him an enormous contract which he didn't live up to. And he left on a free. And he was the most expensive player in the world at the time when he signed him.
That's true.
I mean, I don't see how, if you ask them like, whoa, Real Madrid, would you do this deal again? I don't think they would. And you could say, oh, but La Decima and stuff like that. Yeah, I know, but it's not, and then this is the thing we run into, right? It's not like if Gareth Bale, if instead of spending all the money, which is something like 350 million over the life of his time there, if instead of spending that money on Gareth Bale, they had spent it on other people, maybe they would have won stuff anyway. Maybe they would have won more.
You don't know. They might not have without him.
But that's what you always look at. Is you always have to look at. Look, I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's more deals
that
go wrong than go right. The difference, I think, and this is what we as fans often forget, is when you make a mistake on a 10 million euro, when you're a top club, because obviously 10 million euros for some clubs is a ton, for others it's very little. You make a mistake on a 10 million euro player, it has a different impact than if you make a mistake on a 100 million euro player.
Completely.
And I think there's two reasons, and looking at the forwards list, I think it becomes very evident. There's two things that we see that I think lead to bad decisions. One is situations, and like Barcelona dominate this list, right? Griezmann, Coutinho, Dembele.
Yeah.
You see a lot of reactive signings, right? Oh, we lost Neymar. We're sitting on a big pile of cash. Let's get Coutinho. Let's Dembele, whatever, right? That's obviously not good business practice.
Not the way to do it, no.
And part of it is you're hampered because people know you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think that's when you got to show some intestinal fortitude and say, we think this player is worth this much. If we don't get it, we'll walk away and spend our money elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you're completely right on that. We discussed it at length before when those deals happened. That even outside the money, they didn't really make sense, to be fair. And I think it was not just a bad judgment in terms of how much we're ready to pay and being bullied into paying those kind of amounts, because that's what they were. They were bullied, but also the fact that how you almost misunderstand what your team needs at that point. Okay, you lose Neymar, who is who played on that left hand side with Suarez and Messi, and instead of going to get Coutinho and Dembele, who don't play like that. I mean, there were so many other players they could have gone for less money that could have been far more successful than those two.
Or maybe you get 6 or 7 of them for the amount of money you spent on it, and maybe a couple of them far exceed expectations, a couple of them live up to them, and a couple of them underachieve, but you're still better off.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's also, so you talk about Barcelona and how bad some of the deals they've made. I mean, Manchester United are the other club in here that have, I think, the lowest grade for their players. And then Atletico Madrid, which is an interesting one because the two that they have, well, certainly I think the two that they have in this list are Thomas Lemar, big failure for 72 million euros, and obviously Joao Felix that we mentioned. The thing with Lemar, and we go back to the injuries, and Lemar agreed obviously to go to Atletico. He could have said, no, I don't think this is for me because they're playing such a style that I don't see myself ever adapting to this team. Right. And then we're going to go back to structure that you mentioned a bit earlier. For Lemar to think, I can go to Atletico with that price tag, with that much money invested on me, and be a success, I find it really, really hard to believe that anyone around him or even himself thought, do you know what? I see that, I know the way they play, I can see it. and I can thrive in this environment, and I can become an amazing player and justify all that money, I find really hard to believe.
Yeah. And there you get into another factor, which is when we start mentioning deals involving Monaco and Atletico Madrid and certain people, then you always kind of wonder about these vast amounts of money moving around. And I'll just leave it at that. But it certainly didn't help him. Remember, Lamar was linked with Liverpool as well. I think Arsenal too,
He was very close to Arsenal.
And those clubs didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And it would be fascinating to know why. Obviously, they may have been justified. I don't know. There's a parallel universe. I think Lamar would have been a very good fit at Arsenal, actually. Probably more so than Liverpool. And you have to take these things into account, I think, as well. The other thing which happens all the time is clubs fall in love with players.
By club, you mean what? Managers or sporting director or chairman,
sporting directors and coaches. It does my head in about coaches coming out saying, "Oh, I wanted this player. They didn't get me the guy I wanted," and coaches going to the sporting director going to the CEO saying, "We have to get so and so." Blah blah blah. Not to me, great sporting directors understand that, like, almost every player on this list, with the exception of Cristiano Messi, these are fungible players, right? If I don't have him, I get somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. There's a moment when you walk away.
Yeah.
And yet. It's like, maybe because they're ultimately playing with other people's money, they take these gambles and they convince themselves that the player is essential and the player is necessary. And because we don't have transparency in football, I'll go to somebody who we're going to talk about later on the show who's not on this list. Romelu Lukaku. Chelsea had a Champions League winning manager, Thomas Tuchel, an experienced Champions League winning manager. He decides to make Lukaku one of the highest paid center forwards in the world last year.
Well, it's not really Tuchel.
Well, that's the thing. Who is it?
Marina Granovskaya
and Peter Cech fall in love with Romelu Lukaku and think it's a good idea to spend this. And what does Tuchel say? Yeah, let's go with this. Yeah, let's not go with this.
Yeah, but Tuchel doesn't say give him £250,000 a week.
No, but I think to some degree, I don't know for a fact that Tuchel is involved with salary conversations. I think he definitely should be, because when you're running a club, you say, we have a finite amount of money. If we pay this guy this much, we can't pay these other guys. Where do you want to put the chips? It's, there's a saying that, like, kind of victory has as many, sometimes victory has many mothers, and defeat is an orphan. Nobody wants to claim responsibility for these things, right? The Pogba deal, which didn't work out, right? Oh, it's nobody's fault. Mourinho, no. We don't know. Nobody did this. Yeah. We don't know. Or rather, we just blame Ed Woodward, because Ed Woodward, of course, gets blamed for everything. Yeah,
pretty much. I do think that there's and again, you need to look into all of those deals, but in terms of the structure that some of those players walk into our club, which they can adapt quickly, especially if it's a good one, or they can just sink completely and almost disappear when it either doesn't fit them or is not really made for them. And Lukaku, in a way, I understand everything that you said before. He also arrived in a team and in a system and a manager that didn't actually, I think, didn't help him enough to fit in, really fit in. And I think there's a lot of players in your list, but again, it's not so much the goalkeepers and the defenders, but more in midfield and the forwards, who, if the structure around was messy or just not up to the task, where they struggled. And again, your grades are perfect, but a lot of it could also be down to those players walking into a system already put together that didn't really fit them. And then we go back to the point that you just made earlier. Why would you sign some of those players at times where a lot of people could see that they would not fit in?
Yeah, and I'm thinking Coutinho is a great example of this. Again, just don't want to just pick on him, but there's a whole bunch of people, Lamar, who we've mentioned. I think sometimes you also have situations where you overspend because you want to win something, right? Because you have a window of opportunity that's closing, and you see this guy as a last piece. I don't want to say last piece of the puzzle necessarily, because he might not fit, but he had so much quality, and so we're going to roll the dice on this. And Cristiano Ronaldo going to Juventus, I think, would fit into it. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5. I don't know, to be honest. It maybe might be closer to 2 in the sense they might normally know. Now I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
But then I look at Eden Hazard, and he's moved to Real Madrid, 115 million, and he had a year left on his contract because this isn't reflected on here. And he's 28 years old at the time. Honestly, what would Hazard have needed to do? Stay fit, score 20 goals and 20 assists every season to live up to that price and those wages at that age?
Yeah, completely.
So
we go back, but Real Madrid, there's also James Rodriguez on that list for midfielders.
And that is a perfect example of the emotional decision.
World Cup 2014, that incredible goal, that tournament as a whole, and then you bring into your team, and he's had some good games. It's just not, and he's a very talented boy. There's no problem. We can debate the work ethic and all those kind of things, and go back to the mindset that we mentioned at the start of the segment about the drive and the ambition. But that was never going to work. It was never going to work. And for 75 million euros in a team that you have already the boss in Cristiano Ronaldo, where everything has to go through, this was just no. Yeah, okay, you're Florentino Perez, you watch television, you say, oh yeah, I need James in my team. But it's more complicated than that.
I think there's some stuff about it, because again, I know Florentino can make emotional decisions sometimes, but I know that's the popular narrative, that he watched it on TV, saw Colombia at the World Cup and fell in love. Yeah. I want to give Florentino, I can be critical of Florentino, I am often critical, but I want to give more credit from that. I think there's still some stuff that we don't know about this team.
Yeah, maybe.
That has to come out, because it just made so little sense at the time. But, that brings us to an end. I think I want to keep doing this. I'm going to do this every year.
I think you're very good at it.
See for trends, it's easy stuff. And feel free to debate. But listen, if you want to disagree on these, that's fine. But please disagree on the criteria. Not like, how could you give Kevin De Bruyne a 4 out of 5 when he's the best midfielder in the world? He's the most expensive in the world. Yeah. 4 out of 5 means he surpassed those expectations. Manchester City won a league title without him, and another one practically without him. It doesn't mean you get 5 out of 5 and go into a Ronaldo at Real Madrid situation. Anyway, that's all for another time.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.